I've got a bit of a think piece for you guys today. This is something I've really been racking my brain on for probably the last 2 or 3 weeks. And whenever I'm really diving deep into some self-discussion on a certain topic, I definitely like to share it with you guys. Number one, because I like to actually, kind of see what the community thinks. Usually when I'm thinking about a certain topic with the industry, I'm, trying to sort of develop my own perception for how the community feels or how the community is perceived by the developers in some instances even. So to actually be able to put the discussion topic out there, even though I'm not really here to give you some clear-cut, definitive side of the coin, like this is how I view it. No, it's more so to get everybody's juices flowing and to really just kind of see where we all sit on a certain topic that I think could very much shape and affect the industry, how games are developed moving into the future. So as you can tell from the title, today we're going to be talking quite a bit about the concept of expansions replacing sequels. Now, some of you might say, Tony, well, this already happens. A lot of these games have expansions that keep them going for years and years, but I wouldn't say we've reached that point where games are traditional games like, a game like Destiny, a game like The Division, are staying alive for as long as, say, a game like World of Warcraft. I mean, at the end of the day, World of Warcraft is the perfect example for what we're talking about. It's the concept of removing the sequel from the equation and continue to expand and to grow the base product you once had. 10 years down the line, that product's going to look nothing like the base product, but you never had to release a box with a 2 on the cover. You never had to go back and sort of rebuild and rebake all of your core systems, because now that there's a number 2 on the box, players have an expectation for this to be completely different from anything they saw before. I think there's a lot of negative perceptions that publishers and developers already have because of what history has taught them about consumers, about us, about the people who buy and play their games. And I think when we see a number 2 on a box, the majority of comments you see on the internet, the majority of criticisms you see on the internet is this game is basically that game, it's the same thing. They didn't even make any changes. And then when a developer does make substantial changes, and those changes kind of create a flux and the community doesn't like the game because, actually, I liked the stuff from the first game. There's such a massive psychological element behind the consumer side of video games that a publisher and developer, the developer more specifically when they're designing the game, has to try and work around. And, it's always boggled my mind, this is a different discussion for a different time, that these development studios don't have, psychologists on their teams to help them deal with this sort of thing. But there's no doubt that there is no real clear-cut answer. I do, however, still stand by my belief that putting a 2 on the box really does change the game for what the consumer expects and then what the developer has to do to try and match those expectations. And I think with a lot of games today, it's a dark, slippery slope once you've got to put a 2 on the box, So why don't we see more games following the path of World of Warcraft and these MMOs and instead continuing to release expansion after expansion, improving the experience, massive expansions along the way that are basically sequels, but allowing the studio to continue to build on what was potentially 3 or 4 years of a lot of hard work. Look at a game like The Division right now. There were some people talking about The Division 2 being announced next year at E3, and I'm like, oh God, no, I could throw up. Please don't say that. Massive has worked so hard to get The Division to where it is today. Between the paid content releases and a crapload of free content releases, The Division is a better game than it ever was and probably one of the best co-op shooter RPG hybrids on the market today. I will stand by that. If you haven't played The Division, it's on sale constantly throughout the holiday season for $30 for the season pass, which is all the paid content, the base game, and all the free content. It is more than worth your dollar. It is it's such an incredible game. Massive did such a good job. They took it from the vanilla experience, which was good, but it just kind of felt like it was lost in its own environment. It didn't really know what direction it wanted to go. And now they've really embraced what The Division is. It's such a content diverse and rich experience. There are so many ways to play the game, whether you're in co-op or alone, whether you're at endgame or making your way to endgame. I mean, some of the changes they've made with that game, like the world tiers, are just so smart. Imagine them having to sort of throw that all away, start from scratch and figure out how they make a sequel, because again, they've got to match the expectations of the consumer, because now they've got a 2 on the box. It's got to be different. It's got to be new. The consumer wants it to be shinier and they want it to look more graphically impressive. I can't stand those sort of conceptions, misconceptions, preconceptions, whatever you want to call them, that I think come with creating a sequel for a developer. And I really would like to see that become less of a thing. Now, there are plenty of games out there that need a sequel. Like, a sequel for some of these games is a chance to rebuild, to restart, because they weren't that successful. You know, Titanfall 2 is a great example. I do not want to see Respawn have to continue to just develop for Titanfall 2. I think they deserve to have sort of a clean slate, if you will, to reconsider how they want to craft things and how things want to be presented to the player. I'm not saying that they couldn't just come in and make some substantial changes to the game that's already there. And hell, if those changes were badass, I'd support it. I'd support any change they made, especially if it was, you know, them making an attempt to evolve the game, much like Rainbow Six Siege, and much like The Division, and much like Destiny 1, right? These were all games that took a risk to evolve their product and to make it better than it was before. And for those games, frankly, it paid off, you know? Again, that's why I don't want to see them throw away that hard work. But I think in a lot of instances, you know, we could see a brighter future for developers if they didn't have to make sequels. You know, they could just expand on the work that was already there. I mean, just for 1 second, imagine The Division next year, around springtime, getting the announcement of a massive expansion coming to the game. The biggest expansion yet. They're going to charge, you know, $40 for it. Obviously, there's a lot of things with this discussion that I don't have answers to. Price points, you know, how does a developer, how does a publisher make as much money as they could make with a sequel, so on and so forth. But let's just focus on the content, the development side of it for now. Imagine them being able to come out and announce a big $40 expansion. Hell, I personally would pay $60 if this was like a serious expansion. The game's going to move forward in time. It's going to be spring now. They're going to be able to take the old content that already exists, and now it's no longer winter. So we've got an entirely new environment that they were able to work on that was built off of the environment they already had there. And then they can also add a new zone. You know, maybe they take us across the bridge to proper Brooklyn for the first time. They can continue to expand the story and evolve it from there, rather than having to, you know, make that clean slate, if you will, and put that 2 next to the game. I mean, how many people would be interested in that? How many of you would rather see The Division build off of what they've already worked so hard to establish than to just say, The Division 2? You know, like, again, I know there's financial issues with that. There's no doubt that releasing a sequel probably is more profitable than releasing an expansion that maybe doesn't come at that full price. But, you know, I think with intelligent and fair, consumer-friendly monetization, expansions can work, you know, without subscriptions. I think this is something that could work. And as a consumer, you know, I'm speaking very much from my perspective here. I can't give you the viewpoint of the developer, the publisher, but as a consumer, this is something I would absolutely be on board for. In fact, this is something I want to see. You know, I'm frankly tired of developers being put in a position where it's clear they had to ditch the product they worked so hard on because it's a sequel. I think Destiny 2 is an extraordinary and unfortunate example of this. Now, I know a lot of people right now are really wanting Destiny 1. Like, why didn't you just expand on Destiny 1? But I think, you know, we still are at a point in the industry where what I see, you know, my perspective on what the masses want is sequels. People are still screaming for sequels. I don't think the majority of us are sitting here and saying, yeah, I'd much rather just have a really big expansion that's maybe even full price. I think people are screaming for sequels. People are still out there screaming for better graphics before they even talk about gameplay mechanics. So again, I still think the perception that developers have for the consumer side of things is really affecting the way games are developed, because you just have to take that into consideration. And that's how anything is created. You look at what you see, the people, the thing that is going to consume your product, and you try and build off of that. So, you know, with Destiny, I would have loved to see Bungie be able to just continue to actually expand what they were doing. You know, that in some instances might have required a period of emptiness for Destiny, but we kind of already had that at the end of Destiny 1, right? There were like a few expansions, there was sort of a blank period of time, and then boom, Destiny 2 came out. And I think that also has a lot to do with why, you know, Destiny 2 feels very rough around the edges. They were trying to make a sequel. They were trying to make something that felt new. And at the same time, they were doing it in a very short period of time, you know? So, you know, I think these games that are trying to last for a very long period of time have to be some of the most difficult games to develop. The demands that you're trying to meet from the business side of it, combined with, you know, the want and will to make a great game and to also please your audience. And I really do believe that the sequel for these games is a weak point more than it is a strong point. So again, my personal opinion, my personal perspective on the situation. Again, something I've been thinking a lot about as of late. And I'm not saying, once again, that this is the route that every game should go. Some games genuinely do need that sequel. And sometimes a sequel just works, in the case of like a single player game, for example. No, I don't want expansions are great in single player games, but I don't want GTA 6 to be an expansion to GTA 5 necessarily. I think for persistent world games, especially like the ones we mentioned, multiplayer games, this sort of thing works really well. Overwatch is another game. I can't see Overwatch ever getting an Overwatch 2. I think Blizzard has that experience from working with World of Warcraft, and for them, it's just about expanding the experience. They teased a little bit this year as we moved into the holiday season about something really special happening with Overwatch. They've already dabbled in terms of their special events with PvE stuff. They're constantly using their platform to experiment, to introduce new ideas, while still focusing on that multiplayer element. And again, that is sort of the direction, I guess, I'd like to see all these developers to be able to take for years and years to come. If Destiny 1 ended up being a 10-year game that was just Destiny 1 with, that re-release for PC around the time that Destiny 2 came out, with a new expansion attached to Destiny 1, they could just keep building off of it, I'd buy that. I'd buy that every damn time. I would fully support that direction if those development studios, where it made sense, decided to pursue that direction going into the future. So let me know your thoughts. I really want to hear from you guys as consumers. How do you perceive sequels? And how do you feel about the idea of the expansion replacing the sequel, even if it means that you're getting a sequel-sized content drop that is, that is full price? Obviously, that's always going to be a big thing that's really on an individual basis, like the worth of an expansion. Is it worth it for me? How much time do I have spent in it? Everybody perceives the worth of a game differently. So regardless, let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. This is definitely something that I wanted to get you guys thinking quite a bit about, because I think it really, it is something that is happening right now in the industry that we very much, I think, have influence on. This is something we speak out about, and we see more people saying, no, I don't want a sequel. I'd rather have an expansion, and supporting these games that are doing long-term support like The Division, like Rainbow Six Siege, then, maybe publishers and developers can start to see that that could be a better path for them. Let me know down in the comment section below. Thank you guys so much for watching. It's like 10 degrees out today, so I hope you're enjoying a frigid one if you're over on the East Coast like I am. I know I am. The cold is a nice break from the warmth, and it makes you actually appreciate the warmth. I'll see you guys in the next one.